studies whatsoever.
What a tremendous group. So we're going to start. Grace is going to give us some background. Then she and I are going to do a little Q&A to tease out the various complex threads of what she's going to lay out for us. And then we'll open it up for discussion.
Great.
Is it working?
Is it working?
It's for the webcast.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Cool.
right. Okay.
So we're going to talk about technology and elections in Kenya. If you check out the internet, you get all these images about Kenya. You'd think everybody's tall, man jumping, and we have a lot of animals. But if you look at this little picture on the right, it shows you people queuing during the voting day, because people take elections so seriously, and some of them woke up at 3 a.m. just to vote. And so Kenya is a beautiful country with difficult politics. We've had 7 presidential elections since independence, which we got from the British in 1963. All but one of these elections have been disputed. The results have been disputed. And in 2007, we had the worst dispute, and we had post-election violence where over 1,000 people lost their lives and thousands more were displaced. This led to a reform where we have a new constitution. And then in 2013, we had elections, the first elections under the new constitution, where interestingly and amazingly, we voted in 2 ICC being the International Criminal Court, 2 ICC indictees, and they had been charged with mass atrocities, and we voted them in. And between 2013 and 2017, we were just on campaign mode, and we never really had a governance period. We just kept on discussing issues. And in 2017, by the time we were having elections, issues of corruption, historical injustices, equity, we had massive strikes, and these were all the issues that were in discussion. And the election, which was nullified, had 2 aspects of technology. On the one hand, we had certain aspects of the election being carried out using technology. For example, we had biometric voter registration and biometric voter identification. We also had a results transmission system that depended on the internet, 3G, to transmit results from the local areas to the national tallying center in Nairobi. And then now, as I'd said earlier, the presidential results were cancelled. We're going to have repeat elections on October 26th. And one of the key issues in contention right now is whether we're going to use the same results transmission system. Then another aspect of technology is that for the politics itself, for issues like campaigning, there was a lot of use of technology, especially social media. WTF is WhatsApp, Twitter, and Facebook. and there was positive use. For example, most people accessed the voter register, which is a big deal because part of the issues in elections are always about integrity, whether dead people voted and so on and so forth. So this was accessed using the internet and social media. And then on the other hand, we had negative use. For example, the internet was, and WhatsApp was awash with fake news, propaganda, negative campaigning. And the response from the government was to try and regulate social media. We had regulations that went as far as creating liability for WhatsApp admins. I don't know how many of you use WhatsApp and understand the dynamics of WhatsApp. It's really big in Kenya. Like, everybody I know is in a family WhatsApp group, a neighborhood WhatsApp group, a local area WhatsApp group. And so what happens is, in these groups is that there's a lot of trust. And if you get fake news coming in through WhatsApp, you are more likely to trust that news than a Facebook post. And another response by the government has been massive surveillance. We are among African countries that have spent significant amount of our local budget on surveillance equipment and technologies. These are just examples of some of these fake news and disinformation. On August 2nd, which was a few days to the elections, if you searched for Raila from Kenya, the top result would be 12 reasons never to trust Raila, and it would take you to this website called therealraila.com. Of course, that was a paid ad. If you searched for Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta were the two top contenders in this election. If you searched for Uhuru Kenyatta, who's the incumbent, you'd get all these really nice, positive stories about him. And this was spreading on WhatsApp, and this website received a lot of hits on being put up, which is really weird because people use prepaid internet bundles to surf the internet, and it's really expensive to watch videos, but there was still a lot of hits. And this was, if you searched from ICANN who is to query who owns the website, it was private. Interestingly, the website is owned by the same people who own another website called Uhuru for Us. So the consequences of how we used the internet for elections is that it increased the polarization in the country, and of course increased the policing of the internet. And a lot of vocal people no longer feel as liberal and secure online as they did before. But there was also a lot more political discourse. People were able to look at issues of truth and reconciliation, which is a process that Kenya was supposed to be undertaking, but we have never quite sat to discuss historical injustices and other problems in the country. And you could actually say that our response, the citizens' response to misinformation and fake news and all that body of information could be directly showing that we are reaping the dividends of early adoption of technology, because as many of you are aware, Kenya was among the first African nations to adopt technology. We have 4 or 5 huge fiber optic cables. We have a vibrant innovation and technology culture. And so we had a lot of interesting local solutions in fact-finding, and they were also able to create their own content and spread it using the same social media, WhatsApp, Twitter, and Facebook. The only interesting thing is that generally there's such a miscomprehension of the Kenyan political scene, in my view, and this can be seen from how the observers, especially the international community, was really quick to urge everybody to accept the results of the election. And there was an editorial in the New York Times on August 13th that, painted candidates in very bad light. And it turned out that when these matters were taken to court, the election was nullified. So beyond just looking at the process of voting, the picture I showed you where there are all these people who woke up early to vote, and there's a question of how observers carry out the whole process, and understanding even questions as why are there such high stakes in African elections? Why is it such a do or die matter? And why did, for example, fake news take a different, why was it so different in Africa or in Kenya compared to maybe the US or Britain during Brexit? So I'm also part of an election observation team, and currently everybody who's in the election sector is working towards building more trust in technology, because we believe that technology helps a lot in making voting more efficient. And like if you don't take too much time announcing results, it's also good for for the country because we can quickly go back to our normal activities because elections almost stop everything. So in a nutshell, that is the background of Kenya and elections, technology and elections in Kenya.
Great. So I wanted to, you mentioned at the very end that you were an election observer. And I think it would be really great to hear a little bit about what that's like and who was observing this election. What were because I know there were different groups and representatives, and so what was that landscape? And then if you could tell us a little bit about your own experience.
So a lot of international community, the European Union has a big mission every time Kenya has elections, and they come to observe the election before, during, and a little after. If there's no violence, they don't leave immediately. If there's violence, they leave the country immediately. And then there are also observers from the African Union and COMESA. COMESA is the Common Market for East and Southern Africa. Sorry. And then there's also another, there's always an observation mission from the US, from these foundations that are affiliated with political think tanks, like the National Democratic Institute. The Carter Center had an observation mission that was really highlighted because it was led by John Kerry, who's a former Secretary of State and who's also lost elections and considered in the past. And so there are also local observer missions, but because of internal problems with ethnicity and politics, people put a lot more trust normally in the international observer missions. And for example, in 2007, before observers could give a go-ahead, could give a clean bill of health and say that the elections were okay, like nobody could accept those results. So there's always a big deal about observers, but this time round, like in many other places in Africa, they seemed to have missed the mark.
And what about your experience?
So my organization is called the Kenya ICT Action Network. We were observing tech deployment. We observed how the technology was procured, which was very problematic because the commission, which runs the electoral management body, was only put in place 6 months before the election, and they were the ones to start the procuring process. We gave input into the process. One of the big issues at the time of procurement was that the whole country was not covered by mobile networks, and it became a big deal about how companies pay some money into a universal access fund, and there's a lot of money that was sitting in the universal access fund, but these places in the country had never been covered by even 2G technology. So one of the big recommendations at that time was to try and find a way to cover these places, and a lot was done to try and cover these places. Later on, issues changed to who would have access to this, to the back end of this technology, and this became such a big issue because in the end, during results transmission, the big issue was that the opposition claimed that the system had been hacked. And up to now, as we prepare for October 26th, this is still the issue. Who will have access to this technology? And there have been all sorts of recommendations, people asking for the UN to come and have access to this part of the technology because we don't trust ourselves. And well, in the end, it's going to be up to experts and maybe political parties, like a representative group, to have at least observer access to this technologies just to build trust within the society that the technology will not create or change the will of the people, which is expressed during voting. Yeah.
I wanted to ask if you could just also say a little bit about, there was one particularly violent incident, about 8 days before the election?
Yeah. So the way the law is made and the framework, the person who was ICT director at the electoral management body would have, like super access to the back end, to the servers and everything. And 8 days before the election, among all the drama that was happening, like the ICT director of elections was found dead. Ooh. And his hand was missing and later found, and so on and so forth. And it was really a big concern. Of course, now the issue is under investigation, but the fact that technology is taken as such a big piece in the whole electoral process, and that this is such high stakes election that somebody could lose their life because of their job is really interesting. And later on, when the Supreme Court was ordered a review of the server logs and all that, I mean, these WhatsApp groups where techies live in, and most of the techies who are really good database administrators were like, there is no way I would go to court to give evidence about these issues because I'm a young person, I have a family, let me stay alive. So, yeah.
What do you think were, in the court's decision, what did they say were the sort of biggest reasons that they nullified the results?
So the main issue, the court said that there were so many things that were irregular that you could not trust the results. At the core of the petition was the claim that the technology had been hacked, the results transmission system had been hacked, and there was an algorithm that was increasing numbers for the leading candidate and keeping him in a lead. And so the court's first response in a very limited time was, there are paper backups to all these results. So can we have a look at all the paper backups? And it's in looking at these paper forms that the court found that there were so many irregular things about the paper forms that these results could not really be trusted as the real expression of the will of the people. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, a lot of times when we talk about technology in elections in various contexts, there's this kind of question about the benefits versus the risks. And I wondered, I mean, you addressed this a little bit in the beginning, but I wondered if you could just break down a little bit in a little more detail for us when you think about fundamental rights. What are the risks posed by using a system like this, and extending it to thinking about the use of biometric identification?
It's really a huge risk, and considering that Kenya does not have a data protection framework, in the new constitution, which is really like one of the most amazing constitutions in the world, there is a right to protection of privacy. However, we haven't effected this through like enabling legislation. So one of the big problems, even when the electoral management body published the database of voters, was that they published too much information. They published people's identity card numbers, and so on and so forth. And well, it's really a delicate balance. On the one hand, it really matters to people to see that voter register and verify that it's a clean register without, dead people or, fake people or whatever. But on the other hand, we are getting more and more into having digital profiles. As I showed you, like we are an African country where data mining and analytic companies can comfortably sell their business to governments. So finding this balance between access to information and privacy and data protection is really a delicate one. But this is something that we can work out if we come together and create a data protection framework that not only protects us from companies, but also protects us from our own governments. We had this situation where earlier in the year, during voter registration, local government administrators would walk around with names, identity card numbers of people and phone numbers and call these people and remind them to go and vote. And this was really shocking. Like, this information is information only available to government, and government decides to use this information towards its own ends. So we need to lead Africa in getting data protection laws that protect the people not only from companies but also from their own government's use of data.
Is there evidence that that kind of data was also used in other ways, thinking about media and social media and WhatsApp and all these different ways that communication was happening around and approaching the election, that might have been an additional factor, that if you were trying to influence a specific group or target specific interests, that type of data might have been helpful?
For sure, I know a lot of people. I also got a lot of targeted messages from local candidates, because we had 6 elections, from local candidates, reminding me to go vote for them, reminding me of their policies and whatever. So for sure, there was a way that people could tell, or the political class especially, could tell who were their constituents and link this to their phone numbers and have very targeted messaging to them. For sure, there was a way. And there's a need for going back to the bigger picture in understanding the political context. There's a need for more research into how, for example, personal data was obtained, from whom did this data come, and so that we can come up with solutions that protect private information.
Could you talk a little bit about the role of private technology companies in this milieu?
Oh.
There's a few different ones. There's a Cambridge Analytica question, and then so maybe we could start there and then move over to our WTF friends.
So Cambridge Analytica did a lot of the communications part for the Jubilee Party. At first, they denied that they were in the country, but it was later proved through investigative journalism that they were actually running the communications for Jubilee. And Jubilee, which is one of the parties in the election. So there was a lot of, like, if you look at the sort of fake news and misinformation and so on, and negative campaigning that was coming from Kenya, it was very professionally done. Like, really nice, interesting videos, really nice, interesting memes. And the thing is that these were now sent to WhatsApp groups, and they spread on and on and on. And I would say that they really understood the landscape, in that they tried to make it as easy as possible, as juicy as possible, really easy to consume even for the semi-literate. Fortunately, we also have a good number of woke people in the society who called them out, and as much as these things were shared in closed groups, what you'd almost call like, the underweb in WhatsApp, which is closed. Like there was an army of people who were also calling them out and bringing them to the open web and sharing them on the open web and fact checking whatever they were trying to message they were trying to put across. So later on, it is reported that Cambridge Analytica left and that they are not going to be carrying out the communications for Jubilee between now and October 26th. On the other hand, we have Facebook, and who owns WhatsApp, and then we also have Google, which is also like a big company in Kenya. Facebook was very key for campaigning. I'm sure 80, if not 100% of the candidates in this election used Facebook in one way or another for political engagement during the period. In fact, there were candidates who did not use any of the traditional methods of billboards and whatever, but relied exclusively on Facebook. So on one hand, they made a lot of inroads with political advertising. On the other hand, they tried to do their part in being responsive to fake news, disinformation. At one point, they ran a whole ad in the local dailies trying to educate people on how to tell fake news from real news.
Wait, Facebook ran?
Yes, Facebook ran a full-page ad, which is yeah,
Okay.
they did. Yeah.
Print ad in a newspaper.
Yes.
In a paper newspaper?
Yes.
Okay.
Trying to tell people how to, well, because these are the dynamics again. Like the fake news will travel through the closed WhatsApp groups. And so they were trying to, in their own little way, contribute to, making a better, safer web for, and they've really also been cooperating with the government in this, in policing the internet, and going around trying to get people to report more so that all these posts can be pulled down, and it's really interesting because it has this response of theirs has not totally been contextualized to the situation, and so they also, in my view, still have a lot to learn about the local landscape. Yeah.
Well, I think we should open it up because it sounds like there's a lot of curiosity and they're just okay. Great. We'll go in a U shape. So Yasu, our friend here, Kate. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and you. And then you. Okay.
So I'm from Brazil, as you know. So we use a lot of WhatsApp communication also for elections. And we recently had a case of one journalist that infiltrated in a group on WhatsApp. It's like a big thing in Brazil. Everyone is talking about. And I want to know from you two things. Did you guys had similar cases, like journalists in groups, WhatsApp groups of the parties? And second, do you think that this helps, like law enforcement or journalists entering in WhatsApps as spies to observe the communication? Do you think that this helps, besides all the implications of it?
Do you want me to take a couple, or do you want me to answer as we go?
I don't know.
Okay. So,
But maybe I'll keep you on.
Okay.
I'll go like that if I think.
So, like I told you, between 2013 and 2017, we were in campaign mode. there's an interesting group of people called the 36 bloggers, which is like these people who campaign for the ruling coalition. And there's also a state-funded office called the Presidential PCSU, Strategic Communications Unit, which has directors whose work seems to be to combat people online every minute. And, they go head to head with the opposition. And this is how we've kept ourselves in campaign mode for 4 years. And we also have like people under the 36 bloggers who come and try to change the conversation in WhatsApp groups, in huge WhatsApp groups, and in huge Telegram groups, especially the ones at critical times, just before nomination. Like if there's gonna be a bad story about a candidate just before nomination, like you can be sure it will break on a WhatsApp group. So
how big are some of those groups?
I'm in a group called Ongata Rongai and Kiseran Residents Association. I think we are close to, we are definitely over 250. We had to move to the WhatsApp link kind of thing and move a few people to Telegram because we are close to maybe 700 or 800 by now. And of course, every politician would have an interest in being in the group and trying to influence.
Sure.
Yeah. So
and the
yes.
ability to maintain trust in that too.
Yes.
After a certain number of people, it becomes
yes.
more porous, you think?
Yeah.
And do you think that this helps? Good for elections?
I think it has both like positive and negative. Positive because if you want to pass a true message, then it will be easy to pass this message because there's more trust. Negative because if you're passing a false message, again, this message will be trusted as false as it is. Yeah.
Hi, Grace. Thank you for that wonderful talk. I just want to talk about the title of this talk, which is did fake news save Kenya from an internet shutdown?
Oh, yeah.
I want to just speak a little bit more explicitly on that, on what your thoughts are around that. And secondly, just related to that, over the past year or so, maybe 10 or so African countries have had elections. Many of them have shut down the internet during election time. And just to make that link between why it happened in other African countries and it didn't happen in Kenya.
Okay. Sorry, I was rushing through the background, but I believe fake news saved us from an internet shutdown. Why? Because all indications were that there would be some form of a shutdown in Kenya, and authorities had been giving this indication and giving warnings that if Kenyans continued to engage and if Kenyans continued to engage the way they were engaging, which is, a lot of hate speech, a lot of, what we call hate speech, a lot of this kind of negative content, then they would shut down the internet. And of course, this content kept growing as we headed towards elections. But I think at the same time, the government or the political party Jubilee really benefited from this harmful content, and they were able to get a lot of people, to mobilize a lot of people to come out and vote. From my own experience and my circle of friends, I know a lot of people who had given up on elections and voting, and they were like, it doesn't make a difference anyway. So maybe I should also explain that I am mostly Kikuyu, so most of my family is Kikuyu, and Kikuyus generally belong to the Jubilee coalition, while Luos and others belong to the NASA coalition. So a lot of Kikuyus, while they felt that there was a lot of corruption and so many things going wrong with the country, still wouldn't have the courage to vote for a non-Kikuyu. And so I think fake news, and towards the end, like there was such a huge spike in this kind of fake news. I think it helped to push more people to go out and vote, especially those Kikuyus and Kalenjins and other affiliated with Jubilee people who would otherwise not have voted.
Stayed home.
Yeah.
Interesting. Who was next? Was it Kate or was it somebody in between?
Was there? No.
I think it was Kate.
I don't know. Thank you for that. So my question is related to the role of social media companies and their policies and the regulation question. Because as you know, this is something I work on, and so just from your experience and from the experience of what you've outlined in Kenya, like, if you were advising the companies as to what their role should or could be in this space, and what you think, if you think there's other kinds of regulatory responses or, again, a role that the company should be playing in this space around the flow of what do you think?
There are many things that could be done by these platforms, including what they're doing, education and everything. But I think more importantly, they are not understanding that the problem is why are elections such a high-stakes game in Africa? And so because all this fake news and disinformation is because people really want to win elections, and it's a life and death situation. And I think in the case of Kenya, we need to, it would be interesting to try another way and, for example, try and understand these people who spread this kind of so-called harmful content. Why are they spreading it? What do they really want to talk about? Is there a place where we can sit down and understand what their issues are and try and find maybe other ways of solving their issues? Because in a way, I think this whole fake news is also helping us to tackle issues of truth, justice, and reconciliation that the formal processes have been unable to tackle. And this is something we're supposed to be doing in reforming our country, but we have not been able to. I think in a weird reverse psychology kind of way, fake news is helping us talk about some of these issues. Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks.
Let's see. Then. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'll make a comment on the Kenyan situation as far as fake news is concerned, and also the internet as it is. We all agree, even in America, that we are in a transition as far as globalization and the people-to-people direct information contacts. You don't need the media, you don't need the Boston Globe or any other news outlet today to get to the next person online. And that's one of the weaknesses, or a transitional weakness, I observed in the Kenyan elections, that people are being randomized as it is through the internet. And it's a very young nation. Kenya is only about 55 years, around that, as a nation of people with excess differences, just like in America. And those differences are being propagated in the internet as it is even here. And my biggest quarrel on technology as far as the elections are concerned in Kenya was that the technology society that was supporting the elections was not clearly informed, and it came out late. When the elections results came out, it's the politicians who are specifying what was wrong in the technical areas in the elections. And I looked at it and I said, he's a lawyer, he has no technology background, he is a politician, he has no technology background, but he is talking of technical details in the server technology. And I thought that was very embarrassing even for the opposition to come out at the beginning and talk of algorithm. Things they didn't have any, even the technical verbal communication to talk about. And as far as the preparation on the process, the procedures on the transmission, I thought both the opposition and the political leading party, they should have come up and agreed on the inefficiencies in technology, which we know, even here, we cannot afford to be transmitting every bit of vote everywhere at the same time. And there is also these population pockets. Some areas have very big populations, and at the local level, there are manual and electronic systems. Cambridge City, I'm very involved sometimes in the election, observing just from out of my own curiosity. When we vote here, it takes a minimum of about a week and a half, sometimes before we get our results. And if you go to the voting room there, sometimes it's very manual. And the Kenyans have this utopia of feeling up, they want to be up there like America when they don't even have the actual resources at the grassroots. And that's why they run to cry to the Western world, our elections are rigged. We have made, the president has done this, the opposition has done this, but they don't seem to be grounded. They don't want to move at their own pace technically and constitutionally. And then there is the other issue of not respecting the law. And we know even here, data breach has become the daily news everywhere. And data breach, to me, is an outcome of unethical IT professional behavior. And until we can enforce some ethics in IT, which I doubt, when I talk to my colleagues in IT, they say it's too late. I don't care if my data is transparent. There's no privacy anymore. And so till Kenya is able to, first of all, get the right team, competent, credible IT people, if you are going to use the elections technically. And then there is the enforcement of the Constitution. This, when you talked, you brought out the people, the two leading people, the president and his deputy. They were in the Hague, the case that was there. But you did not bring the other side, the opposition, Odiga himself. He was also in the 1982 mutiny, and he admitted. So there is no ethics as far as the, first of all, the clearance of the presidential candidates. Secondly, the preparation of even the high court judges technically. I don't consider them very competent.
I would agree with you that there are a lot of problems with politics in Kenya.
Also,
but I would also say that this is now the process. Mm-hmm. And what we're observing is the process of a country trying to get itself to reform. I'm sorry we didn't go through like everything in our constitutional journey, but these are some of the constitutional contests and people trying to move themselves from one era to another era. And James is just burning to. I don't know whether we.
And
have.
can I conclude? My issue is this excitement in adopting technology and Kenyans. If you look at Kenyans, it's not just politics. They are excessively competitive. Look at even the transport industry, anything. And the government comes in, is too unprepared to deal with all sectors of Kenyans, the average Kenyan competitiveness, which means they need you as one of the players in the observation. I believe you need to move your group slowly in reflecting and preparing in the observation side as far and as well as the advisory side, and bring in more technical people if you are going to use technical.
I'm
And
sorry.
that's
So
it. I know I talk too much.
we
I
want to
talk too
get,
much.
there's
Yes.
a few other questions. James, is yours pertinent to this? Or should I come back, because we've got a couple more in the queue?
Let's come back.
Okay, okay.
Thanks, Grace. You had mentioned that there are an army of people who are taking fake news from closed groups to open groups and correcting them. Is there any evidence that they are motivated by correcting truths, or are they partisan people trying to just correct the false information about themselves, or are they indeed editorially independent? So who are they, I guess, is a simple question. And a follow-up to that is, I'm glad that you said that fake news is at least helping to have a conversation, and because that's been our experience at the BBC, where we try to be aware of what the fake news is, and then correct it on, trusted broadcast outputs. So I'm quite interested in how social media interacts with traditional media and broadcasters, and the role of using traditional and trusted media to get a gauge of what people are talking about and keep current, and then correct fake news as well.
I don't know how much. There's a community on Twitter called Kenyans on Twitter, KOT.
Yes.
And like the discussions there are colorful and vibrant, and it's always interesting to see the trends and how they move. I think it would be interesting for somebody, an outsider, to look at the community, Kenyans on Twitter, because sometimes people have impartiality, sometimes they're partial. A lot of these people in this so-called army of who call out fake news may seem aligned to one side. So it would be interesting to see this from an outsider's perspective, because in Kenya, you're either or, and sometimes it's really, really difficult to get people who are. It's really hard to explain impartiality as far as politics is concerned in Kenya. Yeah.
Well, some of my questions were asked and answered, but I'm going to.
Let's keep it to one
add
each
to
at this point. Yeah,
Yeah.
just one.
Did you said fake news was a positive influence, which sounds paradoxical to people here, but was fake news equally on one side and on the other, so that it all canceled out and just caused more people to turn out?
There's a little study that was done by a group called Portland Communications, and they seemed to find that there was more Jubilee leaning or fake news that would benefit that side of the coalition.
Is that the incumbent side or the challenging
That's
side?
the incumbent side.
Okay.
So it's also something that still needs more study to establish who benefited and so on and so forth.
And it's hard to put a direct link there, especially with WhatsApp, because you don't, all of the circulation of news in a WhatsApp group you can't really track. Because that's the nature, well, that's the nature of the technology, is that it's not something that an outside group could study.
Is it like next door, so it's sort of closed in, closed to only people who live in certain places?
No,
Subscribe to a user group.
it's encrypted, so
Yeah.
it's just a private group,
Yeah.
basically. Okay, we'll go to James, and then to you, and then to Casey.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on the initial point. On the technology side, Kenya has, and a lot of these African countries have phenomenally trained techies. And let's not forget, the only reason we end up having this problem of information of mainframes being hacked is because the lead tech guy with the election board is killed and his hand is chopped off, right? So it's not an issue of not having enough qualified people. It's you could be as qualified as you want, but you could also get killed, right? And I don't need somebody working from Google to tell me the mainframe has been hacked. I need somebody working from Google to tell the guy that's running that here's a problem, and this is how this is a problem. I need to make sure that whoever is running has enough qualified people that will give him wise counsel, right? And I feel as though sometimes we have these conversations when we talk about African countries, as though these African countries are out there in the desert and we don't know what we're doing. No, we do know what we're doing. We've been pushing for this for a very long time. And this was a way to make sure that our systems worked the way they should have worked, because we know that the paper ballots had issues, right? So this was a safety mechanism, and they figured out a way around the safety mechanism. So we learn, and next time we try something else. So you have 2 or 3 people who have access to the mainframe instead of just one person, right? And we need to be cognizant of these things. And whether we follow the Constitution or not, we have a new Constitution and we deal with it. We have people that were voted in while they were under indictment at the ICC. So whatever anybody tells me, there was a charge and the prosecution was about to start at the ICC. I don't care what the other person did in the 1980s, because he's not being tried at the moment. And that has nothing to do with the hacking of the mainframe, right? If one party can say we cannot access our mainframes because they're in France and they're asleep, I want to slap somebody, because that's just ridiculous. That's not how technology works, right? But when we talk of fake news, when we talk of technology in African countries, it is not a capacity issue. That is not our problem. We have the capacity, we have the qualified people. It's the fact that we haven't created the space, so that part of the political conversation has not matured as fast as the Constitution has matured. And up until we get that, we have this lopsided approach. And we just have to be honest about it. Instead of, I'm sorry, I get frustrated when people talk about capacity in African countries, because I've had those arguments. I've had those arguments with journalists as well. And you sit there and you go, our journalists do phenomenal work. Now, that's a different conversation with how the laws work. And we need to figure out a way to harmonize them. So I have to respond to that. We have phenomenal people. And I know these phenomenal people. And they work for Google, they work for Facebook, we have Chris, who's here, who does phenomenal data work. And she's a journalist. And these people sometimes risk their lives to do this job. And we have to be cognizant of it. And we have to stop disrespecting these folks by saying we don't have qualified people. I mean, I'm sorry, I had to push back on that.
Go ahead.
Right. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. So, we have a meeting afterwards where we can kill each other's, and scream and shout. I wanna take a different kind of futuristic perspective and ask about this phenomenon of fake news. We're talking about that as something that's sort of a recent phenomenon that has occurred sort of in the U.S. and in Britain in elections and stuff. So I want to just turn this around and say, people, if you have ever been in Africa before an election, at least in East Africa, I think I've been in Uganda a few times, and some of it was before social media. Fake news is a political mechanism and a strategy that has been deployed with elegance and ease by politicians throughout the continent in
And the
beautiful
world,
ways.
I think it's
Yes.
fair to say.
Not just
Yeah, the
Africa.
world.
Yes,
It's not,
but-
it's certainly not
But
exclusive
so
to East Africa.
I wanted to ask you to sort of maybe relate a bit more to sort of fake news and elections or political rumor. before and after social media in Kenya, has it changed? Is it different? Is it are the dynamics? Is there anything new about this really?
I think one big difference is that everyone has an equal chance to also create their own propaganda and disseminate it, because the internet is not as regulated as other media, and so in the past, in our past reforms, we would talk about giving fair coverage to all sides of the divide. Now, it's the media who are trying to run after the politicians, because the politicians no longer need them as much. If they create enough momentum on social media, then they get covered. So one big difference would be that in the past, government had more leverage and a bigger advantage in spreading their own propaganda, but now everybody has the same kind of chance. So it depends on your creativity and how good your content is, so that it can be consumable to the people. I think there are many other differences, but that's the big one.
Casey.
So, am I correct in assuming that your assertion is that the amount of fake news around the election caused people to, it increased the turnout for the election? And if that's true, I don't entirely understand why that precluded an internet shutdown. Like, a government could shut down the internet for any reason. I just don't. I mean, is it because the political cost of doing that increased by the amount of turnout that there was going to be? Is that...
So that's one way to look at it. That there was need to keep on giving these messages that would encourage people to go out and vote, and then there may be other reasons why the internet was not shut down. Among them being that the internet was required to transmit results. That's one. And another reason could also be the cost, the political cost of shutting down the internet, since it became such a big, it became big vibes on KOT and Kenyans on Twitter and online. So it became a big topic. And so if I was like a big official sitting in my big swinging chair, I'd want to consider what would be the cost politically of shutting down the internet. And then one other reason, I think, is because we are all aware that the ICC has got eyes on us, and nobody really wants to be to go through the ICC process or to be indicted for anything under the ICC process. So I think there are many reasons, but I say fake news is one of them.
Do you mind if I chip in something?
Yeah, sure.
In this case, but I think in others, there are governments that are thinking a lot more strategically about how to use the internet and social media networks to their benefit. And political parties too. And so I think that the interests in shutting things down in some places, like that cost benefit, it just tends to weigh a little bit heavier towards, if we keep things open, we can keep pushing whatever information at people and keep watching the way they're behaving, and that would be nice. That's a super cynical view.
Yeah.
Sorry. What's our time situation?
Maybe a couple more, like one last question.
One or two more questions, succinctly put.
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Why are elections in Africa, Kenyan specific, why are they a life or death issue?
Many reasons, but bottom line, I think, is that elections determine your leaders, and your leaders have such a big role to play in access to opportunities, economic opportunities, social opportunities. So over the years, people have taken a lot of interest in who they vote with the hope that this person will be able to deliver some economic opportunities. That is not always true. I mean, people are still suffering, including people whose tribes people are running the government. So that is, I don't know, there's still, there's like a myriad of issues, and why we needed a new constitution in Kenya and to reorganize ourselves is that, like, since the British went back to London, we've had so many issues that we like to call historical injustices that have led to some people being marginalized while others really got a better quality of life. And so it's interesting that for a long time, ethnic mobilization was the thing that if we get our person, then we get access to resources. But in this election, we've seen a lot more of people who are just concerned about issues and how, if we get you as our leader, how you'd be able to give us a better access to a better quality of life. So this is a big tension, and I think people will die fighting before this can become the norm in Africa, because it's so much more easier to tell people, come and vote for me because I'm your tribesman. Yeah.
May I make a comment on this question? I think when people have been very oppressed, when they get freedom, they rush for it. And before, like Kenya in the 80s, most Kenyans never used to vote. But after the 90s, when dictatorship eased off, I'm not saying it's over, completely over, and like many African countries, when freedom of speech was opened up, slowly we saw a lot of people being passionate about democracy and voting. And that's what you see everywhere where people have been very suffocated. Once that opening comes up, they think it is time to take our lives back. And I believe that's why during elections, people want to exercise that freedom, but at the same time, we have a problem in Africa with the elitists. We exploit the innocent, the naive, and we misuse our historical injustices. Kenya has had the best, the most educated parliament, the last 2 or 3 groups, but it has been the most conflicting, the most inciting lot. And you may perhaps have to look at the history. Why is it we have the elitist leading in these excesses during elections? That's my challenge.
Okay, well, do you have a final remark?
If you don't, I just wanted to give you the last word. I just hope people take more interest in what is happening in Kenya and Africa at large. I hope you take more interest in our upcoming elections on 26th. Also more interest in how humans of Africa are interacting with technology. And we have a lot of lessons that we could learn for the future generations. And I think life is changing. We don't have to kill each other in order to access opportunities. Like, technology gives us so much more access. We don't have to be divided in order to move to, the new world that's out there for us. Thank you so much for all your support.
What you described in the Cambridge election, they don't do it that way anymore.